Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor behind thesteelcurtain.com with you for another Pittsburgh Steelers Post-Game Podcast. It's another sour note for the Steelers and their fan base as they drop their second straight game. They've lost 2 in a row, both being at Heinz Field. And this one by the score of 24-10 to the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a lot to decipher here. I'm sure there's a lot of blame to go around. We are going to hash it all out. Let's bring in the rest of the crew. We'll go with Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's up, Bryan?
Wow, I'm absolutely numb, and I can't say that I'm completely surprised, but we got to get this taken care of. This just watching it be Cincinnati to do it to you, and seeing the product on the field, you're just like, oh, yuck.
Yeah, it's not good. We'll put it that way. Dave Schofield, editor of BTSC. What's up, Dave?
Hey, how's it going, Jeff? It's been a long time.
Yeah, been a long time. Long time no talk to. So the Steelers lose, and there's a lot of angst, and there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of frustration. Trust us, we feel it too. We are fans just like everyone out there listening, and we want them to succeed. This is definitely a certain, a game that you kind of say, gosh, that was just bad from the start, whether it was penalties, whatever. And so we decided right before we went on the air that we're going to bypass doing the typical grades as we usually do. We're just going to kind of hash this out. We're going to talk about it. We'll bring up some comments from the live chat if we feel it's necessary to talk about offense here in the first part, and then we'll talk about defense and special teams in the second. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense, if we're going to talk about that first, I'm going to be honest, and I'll say it right off the bat, and I'm wearing his jersey. The more I watch, the more I feel that this offense is a Ben Roethlisberger problem. And maybe you want to put it another way, that's fine. I just can't sugarcoat it anymore. And trust me, I'm a big fan of Ben Roethlisberger, have been since 2004, but it's really tough to ignore some of the blatant misfires and just boneheaded mistakes. That interception early in the game was that was right after the Terrell Edmonds interception. They give the ball right back. Just a back-breaking play. Bryan, what do you think about the offense in general, Ben Roethlisberger's play? We'll let you go wherever you want.
I thought last week was a winnable game. Even late in that game, I didn't think that this game was winnable because I just saw what Ben was doing, and he did not have it again. And something, and people are calling for his head, but we'll talk about that in a little while. But here's the thing about that. He's just not hitting receivers right. There's something not right about him. Is the pec hurting? Is he getting time from the offensive line? No, he's not. But other quarterbacks, a younger Ben would have been able to take care of that. And he's not. So there's just right now, we were making excuses the first couple of weeks. We were making excuses last week, but it keeps on getting worse. The problems aren't looking like there's light ahead of this tunnel.
Well, I will say that Roethlisberger had more time this week than he has had in the past few weeks, especially last week against the Raiders. Roethlisberger's stat line was still very deflating, in my opinion. Some of these are a little bit boosted because of the fourth quarter. 38 of 58, 318, 5.5 average, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, was sacked 4 times, 7 quarterback hits with a rating of 70.9. Before I go to Dave, let's give Tom your $5 tip. He put it in there. Thank you, Tom. He said, can we all chip in and get a new O-line, maybe a new OC as well? We'll talk about all that stuff. But Dave, thoughts on Ben Roethlisberger first?
Ben Roethlisberger. It's funny because I think a lot of the problem is the quarterback play, and obviously that's been Ben Roethlisberger this season. I'm not saying, though, that the Steelers even have a quarterback that can fix this, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm not ready to say, oh, just be done and move on. The problem is it just doesn't seem like this offense is set up together. It's between the offensive line that they have and the receivers and the quarterback and everything. It just doesn't seem like it's all made to work together, and your entire offense has to work together. If Ben Roethlisberger is not the guy to be able to implement a Matt Canada offense, then all you're doing is just trying to get by with what Ben can do, what Ben has left in his career to have him finish it out as the Steelers try to improve the offensive line. Because I'll be honest with you, the last thing you want to do is take a young, inexperienced quarterback and throw him back there. Not that the line was the worst thing we've ever seen today, because honestly, I think we saw worse from them earlier in the season. Just so many different things not coming together is kind of, like I said, last week, I kind of expected what happened with the Steelers to be what they did in week 1 and to get better from that. What's awful is that it seems like it's gotten worse each week. It's just kind of gotten worse each week. And that's not what you expected. You expected it to be that bumpy ride that you talked about and for things to improve. You have the veteran quarterback with the leadership, you have the young offensive line, you get everything, you're trying to get the ship aimed in the right direction as the season's going, and it seems like it's just getting further off course.
Yeah, and Sean Manahan gives us $2. His 3 sacks were on Ben for holding the ball too long. I'll agree with that. I was screaming for him to get rid of the ball on more than one occasion. To me, David, feels like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards every week. They do make progress in some areas. You do see actual change in a positive way, but then there's 2 more things, and sometimes they're new things that come out and you're thinking, oh my gosh, now they're dealing with this. In the past 2 weeks, it's been injuries. There were more injuries than this game. Chuks Okorafor is in concussion protocol. Kendrick Green with a knee there. It's going to be evaluated. And I'm forgetting one. Juju Smith-Schuster with ribs. So add that on to all the other Deontay Johnson with his knee, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith with groin injuries. I mean, my goodness, the injury list continues to grow. And I said it earlier, I thought the offensive line played better. And then all of a sudden you have all these other issues. Bryan, I want to talk about Najee Harris. What were your thoughts on him after today?
You know what? I have to say with Najee Harris, I really loved what he was doing. We had an opportunity to go ahead and forecast this. I think we did this as a trio on the preview the other night when we said, look, they're taking away the running game. We need Ben and Najee Harris to hook up and pass to him a lot. And remember how we were talking about the fact that he went to Matt Canada. Ben last week went to Matt Canada and said, we need to get it to Freiermuth more. And I said that could be a smokescreen. They're probably going to go to Najee a lot. And that's exactly what they did. So we all agreed on that. That's something that they did. As far as what did he say? 140 total yards? 144.
Let's see here. Let me read his stat line quick. He finished with 14 carries for 40 yards, and he had 14 receptions on 19 targets for 102 yards. So combined, that's 142 yards.
Well, you know what? So look at it. He's electric when he gets opportunities. Now at the end, like you said offline before we got started, he would have gotten more if he wouldn't have dropped those passes at the end. I don't know whether fatigue set in or not, but the guy was playing like a warrior. And he's definitely, if you're looking for a bright spot, Najee Harris is going to continue to be a bright spot. He's not getting the rushing yards because he's not getting the opportunity. When he does have a nice run, it's getting called back. And gosh. on the Kevin Dotson play, my goodness, that had no bearing on that play, did it?
He also wasn't holding him either. I mean,
yeah.
It's one thing if you're holding him behind the play. He puts his arm out and wasn't grabbing him. Was absolutely mind-boggling. Dave, go ahead and talk about Najee.
Yeah, well, can I say one other thing I forgot to say about Ben Roethlisberger? I had it in my mind, and then I didn't do it, and that was you can't just overlook the 2 interceptions. The one, he got his elbow hit because he pump faked, held the ball too long, and that's what happened. The second one, insisting on going to Juju when he had, I'm sorry, if the linebacker doesn't intercept that ball, then whatever the other position was, I don't know because I couldn't see it again. That was there covering. He had 3 guys. He had 2 guys on him and a guy between the quarterback and him, and he's still trying to throw it to Juju terrible, terrible, terrible decision to do that. That was bad. So on to Najee Harris. I need to ask you guys a question because we won't get snap counts until later. I know at one point Najee, waved to go off the field and he came off, but then it was the 2-minute warning. This was in the first half. So because of that stop, he came back for the next play. Did he play every snap again?
No, I think he definitely did. He definitely did have some plays off, I believe.
But the Steelers ran 77 plays. I mean, he had 2 drops there at the end. The dude had already played over 70 plays, not coming out of the game. I mean, that's just me guessing right now. We'll see for sure tomorrow when the snap count comes out. I know he's a young guy, but when he dropped that first ball, he got the ball. That was on a pass on first down on the last possession. They go back to him on second down. I'm like, he just looks tired. He looks worn out. So you got to do better and not drop those last 2 that he had. But I think he really was, wearing down after, he took a lot of hits from NFL caliber players and everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's turned into a workhorse and everything else along that line. The only ding on him was those were some drops throughout the game. Other than that, I mean, he's given all he's got, it feels like.
Absolutely. And you wonder if Anthony McFarland, who's eligible to come back next week, will be reinstated off injured reserve or not. Let's get some super chats here. Ryan O'Toole gives us $5. I was annoyed they drew such an early bye week, but with all the injuries, an early bye week may be welcome. And that's a good point. I never even thought about that. They have a bye week after, what is it, week 7? Is there a bye week, I think, guys?
I think it's week 7, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Couldn't come soon enough. And then Lumberzack94 gave us $5. Says, I'm so sick of the screen passes in the first quarter. On the first drive, there was 3 or 4 screens in a row. That's Feetner-esque. So let's talk a little bit about the guy that is calling the plays, Matt Canada. So we've seen now 3 weeks of Matt Canada, and I'm in no way, shape, or form going to say that we have a clear, distinct idea as to how he likes to call plays. It's been bad. The offensive line's been bad. Quarterback play has been questionable at best. But what do you all think about Matt Canada so far in this short time period? Bryan, go ahead.
I don't know who is really calling the plays because there's no innovation. Somebody just said on the live chat that it's Feetner-esque, and I'm seeing a lot of Ben right now. Ben influence on this, so I don't know if that's a thing because once again, screen pass, run, what have you, but it gets down to 3rd and 4 and Steelers are going deep. They go for those for the second week in a row. It seems like, and for all the time, it just seems like you're going for that low percentage play on 3rd down and going for that big play. And that happened a couple times again in this game where sometimes you have to get the first down. Now, look, we saw some instances in this game when Ben looked fine. We saw, especially when they were doing the quick game, the no huddle game in the end, and that's something that so he still has the ability to throw the ball, but the play calling, I think there's too much Ben influence on it, and we've heard from the beginning that Matt Canada was going to craft an offense around his players and his quarterback. I'm wondering how much veto power Ben has, how much delegation is going on to let Ben make too many decisions. I'm not sure.
All right, Dave, what are your thoughts about Matt Canada?
It's so funny because everyone's like, "Oh, this looks like Randy Feetner," everything like that. All the other things. There is plenty of things that they're doing that's not what looks the same. I think is Ben Roethlisberger. You've got the same quarterback that does the same things within the offense. That's what looks the same to me. So it's really hard to judge what's going on here when that's the situation. And it just feels like Ben can only do certain things. So therefore that's what the Steelers do. I may be way off with that, but that's just what I feel right now when I'm seeing this, that, maybe it wasn't really a coordinator issue before. It's just, they could only do so much.
Yeah, and it's such a small sample size. I really hate to even, bring this up, but it's been a constant debate. And of course, fans are going to want to turn at the person calling the plays and say it's this person's fault or this, that, or the other. And so Mad Canada, I talked about this in past shows, whether it's on the preview or my Let's Ride podcast, and that is it has to be unbelievably difficult to call plays when you have a team that you don't trust certain aspects of your team, whether it's the offensive line to protect, offensive line to open holes, the quarterback to complete plays. And if you've coached any sport, any team sport, let me put it that way, at, let's say, high school or above, you know what it's like when you know this will work, but you also know I can't run that play. They can't, we won't succeed with that play. And so that's a challenge for sure. Let's get to some super chats here. Steel Dog 88 gave us $2. Said Burrow only threw the ball 18 times. I did not realize the stat line was that low. We will get to the defensive side of the football here shortly. There's another one here. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Dave, if you have it, go ahead and throw it up there. I see it's $5.
I'm trying to find it.
Hey, I got it.
Okay, good.
Bully Mob Kennel gives us $5. Has no one confirmed week 17 last year was Canada calling the plays? Maybe it looked different because of the different quarterback, not the play caller. That's right. Week 17 was Mason Rudolph at the helm when they went to Cleveland. Let me ask you all this, since you brought up Mason Rudolph. I mean, it's a talking point. Let's just put it that way. What would it take, barring injury? Can't say an injury. What would it take for the Steelers to say, okay, Ben, we're going to give Mason a shot at this? Brian, what do you think?
The end of the 2021 season. They don't make changes that easy.
So nothing. You say nothing, barring injury, could have them say, we're going to give Mason a shot here.
Right now, I'm not seeing anybody with the guts to pull them.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing. Just trying to clarify. Dave, you agree with Brian?
Kind of. I mean, it's interesting because, there was the pec injury going into it. We say Ben Roethlisberger rises above, the injury, plays better when he's injured. Not this time. Although, the numbers look good, but the only number that mattered here was, 10 points and an L. So Brian has a really good point. I don't think it's that time yet. I'm afraid that, like Brian says, that even if it's necessary, it won't be unless all of a sudden another injury creeps in, if you know what I mean. That's about what it is. It just seemed such a progression. I don't see how they're. I don't know that fixes the problem, but right now you got to try something.
You have to try something, and I don't think I agree with Brian. I don't think there's any way, barring an injury, that they sit him down unless Ben says you need to sit me down. And we know Ben's never going to say that. He's never going to do that. Yeah. Let's go to another player I want to bring up, and that is a guy who questioned. I mean, I said during the game, is this guy even still on the team? Where does Eric Ebron? I mean, he did have a drop, and of course that's going to be what everyone remembers, but it doesn't even seem like they're using him. Am I missing him on the field is my first question. It seems to me, like Dave said earlier, we don't have the snap counts, but Brian, what are your thoughts? Where's Eric Ebron? You have his jersey.
Yeah, I think the Xavier Grimble might be the better way to go, as Brad Jewett thought I was wearing the other day. I've seen him on there. I just don't think that I feel like he's an afterthought right now. I feel like Ben and the offense, I feel like that they believe that Pat Freiermuth is their shiny new toy, and he's actually doing some things that I think they like a whole lot better. I think if you had to put a gun to somebody's head and say, who's your one starting tight end, who's the guy you rely on, I think they're going to say Pat Freiermuth right now. So I really just don't think that it's getting going, because I love what he can do. I really like what Eric Ebron can do sometimes, but that drop today hurt as well, and they just can't keep popping in to the equation.
Dave, what are your thoughts about Eric Ebron?
It's funny because you actually mentioned something during the game that I thought that would be intriguing. Like when Chase Claypool was dealing with, cramps or whatever, he was dinged up. Juju was out of the game. You look out there and the three wide receivers are James Washington, Ray McLeod, and Cody White. And Jeff is like, maybe throw Ebron out in the slot. It doesn't seem that they're utilizing him as that type of tight end in this offense, I'm starting to wonder, although people still are thinking that the Canada offense doesn't look much different, but it does when you really break down the formations and what they're doing, that Eric Ebron isn't the right fit for this offense they have now, that they're not utilizing him in that way, or from what they've seen from him in practice and everything else, he's not giving them enough for them to utilize him, that they don't have the confidence in doing it. So it's one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, Ebron is, I think it was Jeffrey Benedict in the live chat that said he's the number 2 tight end right now, and he's getting plays like basically like Vance McDonald got last season. And so, you've restructured this guy's contract. You're going to be paying him a lot of money, and you're not even utilizing him. So that's interesting. Next question here as we finish up the offensive side of things, and trust me, we could go on and on about this, but you'll be hearing podcasts about this all week, and I hope you stay tuned because we will be covering this team no matter what, win, lose, or draw. Outside of a quarterback change, which we already discussed, what would be some change that you all could feasibly consider, even going into this week, that could maybe have a positive impact? So what is something that you could say, hey, if they could try this or use this player, whatever that might be, what is a change that you could see maybe paying dividends? Brian, what do you think?
Well, it could happen this week, especially with the fact that Chuks Okorafor has a concussion. But even if he didn't, I would say if Zach Banner is able to go, I think he has a positive effect on the run game. If you could put him at right tackle, I think you're going to get more holes. I really think at this point that Chuks Okorafor does not have it. I could not see them extending him. And I think all along I thought Banner was the guy, but the problem is Banner's body hasn't made him the guy because it's keeping him in street clothes. So if he can get back on offense, that's a start in the right direction. If he can give more protection to Ben as well, that's a start in the right direction. The one thing I don't want to see, the answer is bench Chuks. That's the change that I'm talking about. Because if Banner comes back and Chuks is healthy, and you're like, okay, we'll just put Chuks instead of Dan Moore Jr., I don't think you have anything better at that point.
Dave, any changes that you would consider?
Honestly, I know some people were saying, with the offensive line, I think you might see something there with Chuks, but because they don't change these kinds of things, you're going to kind of almost need the excuse like they might be dealing with now. If he's not available, that actually might be a better thing. Right now, seeing how this season is going, one of the best things you might be doing is getting playing time for your rookie and young linemen. Look, Kevin Dotson, this is only a 6th start. Okay, sorry, 7th start. This is the 3rd game of the season. Okay, and it's the 3rd start. It was the 3rd start for Green and for Moore. So at least continue to get them playing time. That's why, like, if Banner comes back, I don't want it to obviously be like, oh, well, Dan Moore, sit down, because at this point, if the job's not getting done no matter what, hopefully you can at least get these guys some playing time and see if they can evolve into what and grow into what they can be. I didn't get to really break down the offensive line during the game like I sometimes try to do. So that's something that I'm going to have to go back and do. But I think Bryan has a good point there. Other than that, do you really feel like the Steelers are going to make any changes?
No.
I mean, that's sometimes their problem to an extreme. Yet sometimes them not making the change is the right call. Well, maybe it takes another game sample size, but as we know in the NFL, it's only a 17-game season. You only get so many opportunities to go out there and win a game.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room for a lot of people that want to discuss it. Mike Tomlin, how much blame do you put on the coaching staff, Brian?
A lot. Because we've talked about the definition of insanity, and it seems like even though they're getting nailed with injuries, and they are, and you could definitely make that an excuse, but it still seems like the definition of insanity because you're doing the same thing over and over and it's not working and hoping that it's going to get better. I have not seen much of a change. In that, you got to put on a coaching staff. Now I talked before, who's making the decisions on offense? I mean, it could be Ben, it could be Canada. We don't know. But it seems like they both have their hand in it. But if you're letting Ben, run the offense, then that's a problem too. You're letting it happen. So you've got to go ahead and put a lot of it on the coaching staff as well.
Dave, what about you?
All right. For those of you that haven't been around here for a while, Bryan still likes to bring up something from when we attended a game together, my last game that I've been at Heinz Field, how when the Steelers came out after an interception, after the 2-minute warning, and they ran a wildcat play that they had no business doing, I was furious that they went to do it. And what do? They turned the ball over. I couldn't let it go, could I, Bryan? I couldn't let it go.
Oh no,
I still don't let it go.
That was a long ride home.
I have a whole new I can't let it go. And just ask one Jefferson Hartman about this one.
Yeah.
Why in the world are you calling a timeout with 1 minute and 9 seconds left in the first half when you have 3 timeouts and it's 1st and goal at the 5? Najee Harris did the smart thing. I'm screaming at the TV, stay in bounds, stay in bounds. You know why? Because you want to run the clock down. You have 3 timeouts. You're only going to get 3 more plays because it's going to be an and goal situation. It's not like you have to have a bunch of time to move the whole way down the field. And instead, they call a timeout right there, score on the next play, and what do you know? Cincinnati has a minute to do what they do. Now, you still got to play defense. You still got to not have terrible roughing the passer calls happen and things like that. But right there, you're like, oh, we gave up the chunk play. You wouldn't have had to give up the chunk play if you wouldn't have been dumb and called the timeout. So another 40 seconds comes off the clock while you huddle up, get your play, get your personnel, and then you get out on the field to do your thing, run the play. You were already 4 or 5 seconds into the play clock by the time they called the timeout. So you have it all set up. You've got 20 seconds left after running your first down play. Then call timeout. You've got plenty of time to then run 2 more plays after that. You know what they score on that next play anyway? You know how much time's left for the Bengals? 20 seconds. Okay. That's just a bad, dumb clock management move to call your timeouts too early. You didn't need 1 minute and 9 seconds. And in that situation with 5 yards left to go. That was just, I don't know if it was an overreaction. And what really got me irked about that was someone I don't know who would ask the question, but someone called Tomlin out on it in the press conference. And he was already pretty fired up anyway. And what did he do? He acted like he didn't know what they were talking about. Yep. You know what? Now, it didn't lose your team the game, but you killed your momentum going into the half, knowing they're getting the ball when they come out in the second half. That made me mad. The players still have to go out on the field and do their thing. And they didn't. In a 24-10 game, you didn't. But you killed momentum. You made a dumb decision, and then you act like you didn't know what was going on. I still think Mike Tomlin is a good coach, but that was awful. That was terrible. And you can still say that someone is a good coach, and yet they did something terrible in a game. You know what? You've got to get better next time because not every receiver doesn't catch every ball. Every quarterback doesn't complete every pass. Every running back doesn't hit every hole. And every coach doesn't make the right decision. But that is one that cost your team 7 points and killed your momentum.
You made a mistake, Dave. You said that made me mad as in past tense. I think you meant makes me mad because it's still making you mad. Bryan, go ahead.
I have to say this. I love watching a game with Dave Schofield. But one part that I hate about watching a game with Dave Schofield is the fact that he's always right. And when he points out something that's going to be a problem, it always bites this team in the butt. And it's like watching it with John Madden, except for he doesn't pull up to your house in a bus. And well, that's when he used to hang out at my house. Now he ditched me for Jeff, and the invitation's still lost in spam. I guess my spouse check my spam folder because you guys don't invite me for anything. But with that being said, no, Dave's right. And when he put that on the Slack channel, it's not just Ask Jefferson Hartman, because he put it on the Slack channel. And I read that, I'm like, damn it, he's right. And
But I was saying all
And
this
there you go.
before it happened.
And that's the problem. When I'm watching a game with you and you say that this is going to happen, it happens. And that's the worst part. It's because you're right. And I'm giving you credit.
Yeah. Okay, I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I wish I would have been wrong.
Tell Matty Peverell, dude, I watched the game on behind maybe a couple of times because something happens. I don't do that all the time. My gosh, give me another chance. In fact, you need to be in our office Monday morning anyways, Peverell.
Sean Manning gives us $2, says 4th and goal, 2-yard pass. That was the Cincinnati Bengals defense fooling Ben Roethlisberger. He read all out blitz. They all backed off. He swings it out thinking that Najee would have a chance to make a play, and they all backed off into coverage, and you saw the end result. I'll say this as we go into break. The offense is the same way under Fichtner in one way. It's predictable. And you can ask Dave. Derek Watt was on the field, and what did I say? I was calling plays before they even happened. Juju goes in motion. Watch, they're going to throw a little dink off, a little dump pass to Juju. It's so predictable. Everything about it, that's the big issue with the Steelers. So we're going to take a break. Enough with the offense. We're going to go to the defense. There's plenty to worry about there too, right after this break. So if you're on the audio side, go to part 2. If you're listening on YouTube or Facebook Live, stay tuned because we're not going anywhere. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the post-game podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor behind thesteelcurtain.com. Joined with me, as always, Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. And we are hashing out, unfortunately, another loss. The Steelers 24-10 debacle, we'll put it that way, against the Cincinnati Bengals at Heinz Field. That's back-to-back home losses for a organization that's not used to losing 2 at home a season, let alone back-to-back to start the season. But nonetheless, we're talking about the defensive side of the ball now. A lot of issues there. Injuries are still an issue. TJ Watt, obviously, Alex Highsmith. The sack streak ended today. Bryan, I'm sure you know this, but here's another factor. The Steelers didn't sack Joe Burrow. They also had 0 quarterback hits on the entire day, according to ESPN. Bryan, go ahead and talk about the pass rush a little bit.
That weren't taken away by a penalty. They hit him one time.
One time.
No, and listen, they said, nope, you're not allowed to touch him.
Bryan, yeah, true. Bryan, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I look at the pass rush and I saw that Highsmith was going to be out and I saw that Watt was going to be out, I was working on Bold and Bizarre predictions, and I wrote that the sack streak ends today. Then I wimped out. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to maybe Melvin Ingram gets in there. Maybe something happens, but I wrote that they're going to get 1. They couldn't even get that 1 because of that, because they could not get, this is not a great offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. They had a right guard or a left guard in, I believe it was a right guard in Jackson Carman making his first start. He's still a second-round player. I just thought that they could, your regular Pittsburgh Steelers, front 7 is going to get to that quarterback. There, you have Melvin Ingram Jr. trying to do way too much because he's got nobody else around him. You brought a guy off the street. I'll let our pronunciation guy help me out with it. Tuska. I
would say
Tuska, he was in there.
Tuska, who knows?
Yeah, he was in there. But you don't expect him to do too much. That was a skeleton crew there. It really was. When you take the Steelers front 7, the starting front 7, I believe there are 3 remaining on that front 7. If I'm not starters on that front 7. If I'm not mistaken, because it would be Hayward, it would be Bush, and it would be Schobert. And I think that's it.
So that's not even 3 of what started the training camp.
Yeah.
Because
and that's true. And it's wow. And that's very true too, because Wormley wasn't expected, and you expected Tuitt to start. You, of course, with Tyson gone, so I'll say this. Was the defense horrible today? No, not really. Was it great? No, not really. If we were given grades, which I hate giving grades, I'm glad we're not,
So
but
I'm going to do it anyways.
I'm not failing the defense is what I'm saying though. I'm not really failing the defense. They made mistakes, yeah, but this game is on the offense more.
Dave, thoughts on the defense, especially the pass rush?
Yeah, but when the Steelers started let's just say when they finished minicamp, they were like, what were we the most concerned about? Depth at outside linebacker. And the Steelers went out and they got Melvin Ingram and we're like, boom, there you go. But when Melvin Ingram was brought in June, right? This was in June. They bring Melvin Ingram in, and what's he told? I'll write Mel. I don't know if he goes by Mel or not. Okay. All right, 3. We'll call him. He's the third. We're bringing you in here. We're going to have a 3-man rotation. You're not going to be the starter. We're going to go with the guys that we have, but you're going to get significant snaps where you're going to have almost as many as any of them, and you're going to have an opportunity to showcase what you have left for the NFL if you want to go out and get another contract after this year. This is what we're doing. All right, sign me up. Game 3, he has to be the guy, along with someone who came out in 2020 and couldn't find an NFL team last year and then had a good, made the team. Great job, Jameer Jones. And a guy that they had to bring up off the practice squad who wasn't even in Steelers training camp. He was with the Broncos, and they signed him on their practice. The Steelers signed him off on their practice squad rather than Denver. And that was it. I mean, he came in with one thing, and look at how it's gone already. So that's just the pass rush is what it is. That wasn't a roughing the passer. But when you're only making 18 passes, it's kind of hard. You are really limited with the amount of sacks and quarterback hits you can get.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So when I coached lacrosse for well over a decade in Maryland, we used to have this rule. It was called the rule of 10. And I always told my defense, keep the opponent off of 10. We should be able to score more than that. We'll win the game. Like, it literally is just, you got to outscore the opponent. Lacrosse is a high-scoring game if it's done correctly. What is the rule for this Steelers defense? Like, at first I used to say 20. Like, the rule of 20 for the Steelers defense. Keep the opponent off of 20 points, and the Steelers offense will be able to win you the game. What is it? The rule of 10 for the Steelers offense now? Is that what we're facing? I mean, seriously, let's talk this out. I mean, the Steelers defense is, even with all the injuries, is still not a bad unit. But my gosh, what are they going to have to do to win games for this team? Bryan, what do you think?
Probably 13 at this point, and
it's impossible in today's NFL.
Yeah, and that's well, unless you're the Bengals defense, you're able to do that this week, keep a team to 10. Yeah, because the offense is the problem, and you just said something very poignant that this team has a lot of injuries, and the defense is still hanging in there, and that's the thing. If you have an NFL caliber offense that can score in the 20s, you're going to win they're going to win those games. There was opportunities to win this game. I know I said earlier that I felt like they were never in the game, but when you miss a field goal, when you get down inside the 5 and you can't get in, you're not giving the defense any help. And how much really they didn't score a whole heck of a lot in the Bengals did not score a whole heck of a lot in the second half. And one of them was aided by great field position because of a turnover.
Yeah. Dave, 13 points. That's not even realistic.
Well, the Steelers are only averaging just over 14. So
is that inflated because of the special teams touchdown?
Yeah,
too?
I'm taking off the special teams touchdown. They are
so you 16, did take them off.
Okay. 16, 17, and 10. Okay. That's a total of 43 points. You divide that by, you know what I'm saying? My math might have been 13.3 to do. Yeah, I was thinking
9.9.
No, I was thinking, it's under 15 points is what I was looking at. So, but if you really look at it, the Steelers gave up 14 points in the first half and 10 points in the second half. But the other thing is, Look at the points off of turnovers. Jeff says pot, I say poot. Okay. we had an argument about this before. Okay. 14 points for the Bengals.
Yeah.
And what did the Steelers do with their one takeaway? Turned it right back over. So you lose by 14. There you are. Also, think about this. There's so many different things. You missed the 42-yard field goal. I would like to see it again because when I saw it from a different angle, I'm like, boy, it looked like Boswell's plant foot just slid. Don't know if it really did or not. If you get that field goal, then when you have your 4th and 10 from the 11, you could actually have kicked the field goal there to get it to within 8 points. It's just kind of how it goes. But that's grasping at straws right now. The defense, and this is ultimately a question about the defense. What do they have to do to keep the Steelers in the game? I mean,
they have to get more turnovers. That's exactly
you got to get more takeaways. For one, and two, when your offense does turn it over, you need to try to keep those to 3 instead of 7, because right there, that would have been 8 less points, and it's a different ball game. But I mean, still, they weren't put in a good situation.
Nah. Mark Davison from the Touchdown Under crew gives us $5 dingo dollars. He says, "Good day, fellas. Longtime listener here from Australia. Is the first half worth watching? Again, I was sleeping like our team, and the answer is no. I wouldn't watch this game. My thought was honestly, like, I can't believe I missed the Ryder Cup for this. Like, that's it. That's exactly what went through my mind.
Jeff, you are correct. However, as the podcast producer and as somebody that has to talk about this game on Saturday of next week, yeah, watch it, Mark. That is what you have to do. You have to watch it.
If you don't watch it, at least listen to the podcast. We'll be fine.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, my dad left early. He was at my house. He left early. He goes, "I'm going to Walmart." My nephew here. So he would rather go to Walmart than watch midway through the third quarter. He was done. And I didn't blame him.
Let me ask you guys this, since we're talking about the defense. What's more troubling than, Joe Mixon had 18 carries for 90 yards, averaged 5 yards a carry. Here's why this is an issue for me. Tyson Alualu is not coming back anytime soon. And unless Stephon Tuitt can come back, which Chris Wormley, I think it was last week, said that they think he's going to be out a while. His words, not mine. My goodness, this should be a concern for me. This is a concern for me. I think it should be a concern for all the teams. The Steelers being able to make teams one-dimensional. We've mentioned Joe Burrow only had to throw the ball 18 times. That's just, boy, when you give him the either-or option, that's dangerous. We'll go to Bryan. Bryan, what do you think about the Steelers' run defense?
It was non-existent. You have Cam, you've got Joe Schobert, and you have no one else really coming close to stopping the run. And I don't know how well those guys did either. With Tuitt gone, and if he's not coming back, I like Wormley. I like what he can do. If this is a full-strength defense, then they can put it back together. But you're talking a little bit earlier about the defense as a whole, and when you said the defense has to get more turnovers. There's nobody right now. There's not enough guys on that defense right now remaining to be able to put the team on their back on defense. You need a couple of guys on defense to do that. They just don't have the guys to do it. It's the run defense is not there. And another thing about the run defense too, and maybe I was thinking about him a lot because he was in this game today on the opposing team. You don't have a Mike Hilton who is giving you support in the run game as well, in that from the secondary, which he gave a lot of support over the last 3 or 4 years. So you don't have a run game. You don't have a way to stop the run game.
What
about you, Dave? What do you think? Steelers run defense.
Steelers run defense. Joe Mixon is a good runner. You got to say that. But I was saying it seemed like the secondary players were up at the line of scrimmage at times, which meant all you had to do was get past them and you were going to run for a while, if you know what I mean. So the run defense, it wasn't what it normally was. But there was a lot on the defensive front that's not what it normally was, if you know what I mean. So I'm glad we're not grading it because I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, let's get to another super chat. Matty Peveril gives us $2.99 in Dingo dollars, his $1 per L. Tried a new lucky shirt. Don't try new lucky shirts. You got to stick with what works. I mean, my goodness, you don't.
Did we get this one, Jeff?
No, greets from Austria. I hope the season's not over. Well, it's not over. They're guaranteed to play at least. Well, they're playing 14 more games. Regardless, we'll be here for every single one of them for sure. But thank you.
That's
for the
euros.
Is that euros?
It's got to be. I assume.
See, man, my eyes are bad. I was like, wow, he's from Australia too. He should hang out with the other guys.
Put another shrimp on the barbie.
It's a lovely accent. Where are you from? All right, Knight Rider 16 gives us $5 American dollars. Finally,
in the spirit of the Ryder Cup, right?
Yes, USA. That's right.
From Knight Rider, $5.
Very good. I like
America.
that. Can we talk about how our receiver route concepts never scheme anyone open or stress the defense enough to cause a breakdown in coverage? To be honest with you, Knight Rider, if I answer this question, it is that I don't know enough, nor do I watch enough football to be able to see that. I know that Jeffrey Benedict and Kevin Smith, who do our film rooms for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, a lot of times you need that all 22 footage to be able to identify what's exactly happening. You can't really tell from the TV angles. It sure looks like things are discombobulated at times and things should be open when they're not. I can't answer that. Bryan or Dave. Bryan, go ahead. If you want to take a stab at it, go for it. You're like me. You're not a...
Yeah, I mean, why did you even bother? I wasn't going to get it offended.
All right, let's go to Dave. Dave, what do you think about that?
Seattle has 2 losses. I don't know.
It's a good point, but I just can't answer that question. I'm not like poo-pooing his question or his tip. We appreciate it. But my gosh, like, I don't know enough to justifiably give an answer.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, wide receiver routes are not my forte.
No,
mine is. Who would have thought? who would have thought? And I mean, yeah, that the biggest thing I was pass blocking, run blocking, figuring out where to run, things like that. I still say that people are like, why is the Steelers running game getting better? It's because teams are saying, we're not going to let you get your running game going because we don't think you're good enough to beat us with a pass. And I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's execution. I don't know if it's because the routes aren't deep enough. I don't know if it's because the routes are too deep when they don't need to be. I don't know if it's the combination of those things. And honestly, I know this is what Jeffrey Benedict would say right now. Without the all 22, it's really hard to see. So
I guarantee it is. Yeah. That's like, you're looking at a sideline view of something that you need to see from the other angle. So maybe we'll get that. I know that they were talking about getting that going. The all 22 footage for the fans from NFL Game Pass. So we'll see if that can get done. Maybe we can answer that question. Sorry, Knight Rider. We did the best we could. Let's talk about special teams a little bit. Defense is just kind of what it is without the players, like Watt and Highsmith and stuff like that. But when Chris Boswell, that miss, I'm sorry, you just can't do it. You just can't have it. I understand that some kickers are going to miss kicks, but in a game where every single point, especially with this offense, every single point is so valuable. You miss that kick and it puts you in a hole. A big press was just kind of like an everyday punter. I kept on saying, that wasn't a good punt. Like I expect more. I want them inside the 10, not inside the 20, things like that. Bryan, what were your thoughts on the special teams?
First of all, I'm going to take responsibility for jinxing Boswell by calling him automatic the other day, that I'm not even worried about this guy on the preview. I did all of that, and here we go. Missing that kick did not lose the game, but it changed the game and it made it. If he makes that kick, they have an opportunity to find a way to win that game. There's at least an opportunity. When he missed that kick, kind of took it away from them. I mean, sure, there was an opportunity, but and they're not going for it. They're bringing in the kicker. At that point, I did not have a problem with them bringing the kicker in at that point when they brought him in, but you still got to make that kick. What you said about Press, you don't have to replace him. No one's spectacular. When you look at the special teams as a whole from last year to this year, I would take 2020 back because I thought they were a better special team, better special teams unit. So there's just nothing. It's an average unit, not doing anything horrible, just not doing anything spectacular or remotely close to spectacular on a return on anything.
Dave, thoughts on the special teams, if any?
Yeah, I brought it up before that I'm like, I don't know if it didn't seem like something was right with his plant foot. I don't know if it was a slip. Some people said maybe it was an issue with the hold. I'd have to go back and look at it again later when the game's available for me to see. The special teams, you're not getting splash from them like you did in week 1. And if you don't get that splash in week 1, we might be talking about an 0-3 Steelers team. So, I mean, but if whether or not you win or lose is because your special teams has to make a splash play, you just want your special teams to not give up splash plays is really what you want them to do, and to just come through with what they're supposed to do. So, I mean, it was what it was. It would have helped, but it still would have been a tough hill to climb.
Absolutely. Well, we could sit here and talk ourselves in circles endlessly almost today, but let's do some final thoughts here. Let's close out the show. Bryan, final thoughts here on the Steelers' second straight loss, this one to the Bengals.
Don't quit. Don't quit.
Right.
Don't give up.
Play hard. Play hard. I like it. Yeah.
You know what? I mean, look, one thing that's great about Steelers fans, one thing that's great about everybody in the live chat, sure, they are ticked off right now, and I get it, but they're coming back. So don't give up on this team. I like the fact that right now at this particular juncture, they aren't 0-3. That's great. We've seen them put first halves that were bad up and then turn around and save it with a good second half of the season. There are things that could happen here that could, remember, there's 7 teams that make the playoff. You know, there's this team right now is not good, but there's not a reason to jump ship. So I use this, everyone steals this phrase. I use it a lot too. Don't throw in the terrible towels just yet. Just don't quit. They're not going to. One thing they're not going to do is quit.
All right, Dave, final thoughts?
Yeah, and me being a numbers guy, this is one of those games when you're like, you can look at the numbers and they don't tell the story. I mean, there was 20 total penalties in this game, 10 by each team. There was actually more yardage given up in the penalties by the Bengals. The Steelers held a more than 10-minute advantage in time of possession. So it's not like they had their defense out there the whole time where they were being worn down. The Steelers had 21 first downs to the Bengals 12. They had 342 net yards of offense to 268. They were even better on third down, 47%, because they had 19 third down plays, to the Bengals 33%. They even had one less punt than their opponent. There's all these things that you could throw out there, but none of it really mattered because it seemed like they were really out of this game pretty much the entire second half. Once they were down by 2 scores, they were never able to get it close again. So you got all those other things going against you. Where it comes to this team is, and this isn't typical of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's starting to feel a little bit like 2019 in a way of, we can't be looking at January right now. It's just got to be every week, what can the Steelers do to pull it together, to pull off a win this coming week? And then Monday you start over again. And it's going to be a week-by-week thing to see if they can still get themselves back into how everything's going. But already, I know Steelers Nation is already frustrated and everything else. And this is a number that's going to be in my Buy the Numbers article that you'll see tomorrow morning at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. A number that was really disappointing to me was 58,076. And that was the attendance for today's game because they only do the turnstile attendance. That means there was over 10,000 people that did not go to this game. There was over 10,000 empty seats in this game. So you just gotta, this is the Steelers. I'm still going to love them. I don't want to talk playoffs. I don't want to talk Super Bowl. I want to talk about what can they do to pull off a win this week.
Yeah, and a good super chat here. Young and Wood Burning gives us $5. His love you bad, Jeff, and Scobro and Steeler Nation love the content. I'll be at Lambeau next weekend. Let's go. Oh, it's awesome. That would be a great place to watch a game. I'll tell you that. Lambeau Field, and that's where the Steelers head next week. Make sure you stay with Behind the Steel Curtain, not only on our podcast side, but on the written word. The one thing you don't want to be is that fan that just sits there and goes, these guys stink. Know about the team. Know about the struggles. Maybe if you have some, have some education to yourself when it comes to the black and gold. I know we're all diehard fans here. There's over 350 people watching live on both YouTube and Facebook. So clearly you're diehard fans and you're sticking with us. So we appreciate that. That's it for this episode. Hopefully next week we're in a little bit of a happier state. Maybe they pull off the upset in Lambeau Field. We'll be here to talk about it. We'll see you next time after another post-game podcast. Take it easy.